I know that's
Wow.
hard. 20 years old, like, I'm going to live forever. In 37 years, I don't care about that. Ah. This is how the rich get richer. Just start practicing.
Now, before we dive in, just a quick reminder. This video is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and should not be considered financial advice. Our full disclaimer is shown here and on our website. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of us reacting to finance TikToks. So today we're going to be talking about two main items. The first one is, hey, I want to buy a house. What do I need income-wise to make it there? Down payment, all that fun stuff. And the next thing is going to be related to investment strategies. So investment strategies such as, hey, I just got a Roth IRA. How do I keep making contributions to it, make it grow? And also, how do I invest in the stock market? It can be a big, scary place out there. So let's look at these creator videos and dive right into these great topics. So this first creator is called Basic Financial Literacy. So let's see what he has to say about 5 key strategies you need to implement in your life to actually begin your investment journey.
Everybody makes that cost you thousands of dollars a year without realizing. Getting a big tax refund may feel great, but say you get $3,000 back, you really just overpaid on your taxes by $250 every single paycheck. Not only did you give an interest-free loan to the government, but you could have taken that $250 paycheck and put it towards investments, put it towards a high-yield savings account, done something that made you money. You're probably overpaying on your health insurance.
So I agree with this one. So back then, I thought receiving a big refund was always the best thing that you could do. But think about it this way. That 1 year that you gave away your money to the government, you could have used that to invest in an ETF. You could have used it to, invest in other items such as the stock market. You could even froze it in the bank for a couple of months and you would have gotten between 3 to 4% right now for that money. But instead, you kind of gave it to the government and it's 0%. So I completely agree in this regard for this piece.
Health insurance every month by choosing the wrong plan. If you're young, relatively healthy, don't go to the doctor a whole lot, using a health savings account instead means you can pay less in taxes, you invest that money, and you get the triple tax advantage with that. Car and home insurance companies.
So let's talk through that next one. So insurance. When you're young and healthy, the best thing you can do is actually get into high deductible plans. And what this means is, basically, it comes with something called a high yield HSA. So, I'm sorry, I confused the two. So it's HSA. So an HSA and health savings account. So a health savings account, basically what that allows you to is contribute into it pre-tax. So you can actually contribute to a health savings account pre-tax, and anything that grows in the health savings account is not taxable. And finally, if you ever have to take out money for like a medical emergency, it's also not taxed. So essentially, what's the point of having an HSA besides, having it for, of course, for insurance purposes when you have to pay medical bills? The great thing about an HSA is that once it reaches the $2,000 threshold, you can actually use that money to invest it, similar to how you have a Roth IRA, for example. So essentially, an HSA is another great tool you can utilize to actually invest in the market because it's triple taxed. It's triple tax. It has a triple tax advantage. And what I mean by that is, the money you put into it is not taxed. The money that grows in the account is not taxed. And when you pull money out of the account, it's also not taxed. It's one of the only accounts that's triple tax advantage out there. So take advantage of it. Even if you're not using it for your medical expenses, you can definitely use it to invest out there, just like any other IRA.
Companies slowly raising their rates on you is another silent wealth killer. They love to raise rates on you just slowly enough that it's unlikely you'll go through the hassle of changing, but shop around every few years, you're probably going to save yourselves hundreds a month. If you have a retirement plan at work like a 401k, they've probably sent you something like this, and you'd be paying very close to this number right here, the gross expense percent or expense ratio. They throw out fancy names like that to try to confuse you. It's the fee you're paying every single year. If this is anywhere close to 1%, you are getting robbed blind. Get somebody to help you choose a better investment because you're wasting hundreds or even thousands of dollars every single year. Finally, if you're responsible and pay your bill off every single month, you're leaving at least 2% cash back on the table by using a debit card and not a cashback credit card. 5 financial mistakes.
All right, so let's talk through the remaining items that he mentioned there. The first thing is let's look at the credit card, which is very important. By the way, if you are interested in credit cards, we actually have our top 10 credit card link down below. So you can actually choose what card is right for you. So the first thing he mentioned was, hey, if you're just using your debit card for all your day purchase, you're effectively doing two things that are not good. The first thing is you're actually making your cash flow worse by removing, cash out of your account every time you pay your bills. Instead, you can actually use your credit card to pay these bills, the ordinary and necessary bills, and that will allow you to utilize, the 2% cashback, 3% cashback, up to 5% cashback, which is important. The next piece is for the insurance. He's completely right. Home insurance, car insurance, all these things start to creep up. Heck, there's even pet insurance. I should mention that one too. All these things start to creep up slowly but surely, and this causes you to actually, get a little bit complacent and not shop around for other insurances because you're like, hey, I already got kind of everything set up. Everything's pretty fine. Especially when you have a mortgage, you don't want to be changing, property insurance or home insurance very often. However, it's important to shop around because you might be able to get similar coverage with the exact same, similar coverage, but with a much lower rate. So it's great to shop around. Make sure you're actually weighing your options before you continue to remain complacent and just keep paying your bills. And it's easy to pay your bill. It's hard to shop around and actually make the change. Finally, for the 401k piece, yes, it's also important to note that there are a lot of funds out there. The more fees you're actually pumping into the 401k, the less you're going to have to invest. So make sure you're actually looking at your 401k and making the right choices for you, not for the 401k company. So this next creator is called I Am Andrew Russell, and he's going to actually explain how you can actually get into a home that's roughly $500,000, which is the median home price roughly nowadays. So let's see how much income you need to actually get there.
Say you made an hour?
Around 60.
All right, and how many hours you work a week, give or take?
40 hours.
And it's consistent?
Yep.
And you're looking to buy about a $500,000 house, right?
Yeah, right around.
All right, so let's check it out. Let's see if you make $60 an hour, 40-hour work week, if you qualify to buy a $500,000 house. So $60 an hour, 40-hour work week, that actually whittles down to $10,400 a month of monthly pre-tax income. So if you have a $500,000 house, let's roughly say a rate of 6.5%. Let's say an APR of 7.5%, right? That's rate, that's APR. So this should, very loosely assuming great credit and a minimal down payment, let's say $17,500, 3.5% down payment. That's about a $3,000 principal and interest payment. Let's say $200 a month, very rough for mortgage insurance. Let's say $1,000 a month for taxes and insurance. If you add that all together, it's about $4,200 a month mortgage payment. All right, so we can go up to about 47% of that for a mortgage payment from a qualification perspective. That's actually $4,800. So the mortgage payment's actually less. Looks like you qualify. Got good news for you, my dude. How much did you say, man?
So let's kind of walk through this. In order for you to actually, have this kind of income, you have to be making around $125,000 a year. That's roughly $60 an hour. So basically $60 an hour times 2,080, which is roughly 40 hours a week over a 52-week period. Now, when we look at this, we see that he's tossing a lot of terms. So basically, the 3.5% is for first-time home buyers. Usually, you can do up to 3.5% down on your primary residence. You can buy up to a 4-family house. So essentially, you could technically rent out 3 units and live in 1. So that's very common nowadays. Now, for $500,000, you probably can't do that. $500,000 in a lot of cases, especially in the high-income areas, you're not going to be able to actually, high-income / high cost of living areas, you're not going to be able to do this. So with $500,000, the most you're probably going to get in a high cost of living area is going to be like a starter home. Which I know sounds terrible to say this, but it is the, kind of like where we are right now. So in order to actually just qualify, you need to be making $125,000 per year. And on top of that, putting down the 3.5% down may seem like a good thing at first, but you have to think about this. You're also going to be paying mortgage insurance every single month on top of that. And the mortgage insurance does not go away with an FHA. Usually you need to also then refinance it to another loan provider in order to get out of the mortgage insurance. So be very careful when you do this, guys, because you don't want to be, sticking with a company that's going to continue to charge you mortgage insurance, which doesn't add any value to your house. So let's move on to the next creator and see what they have to say. So this next creator is actually called Mark J. Kohler, and he's going to talk about Roth IRAs and how you can grow them.
A regular Roth IRA and put in $7,000 every year. It is going to take you 27 years to have $1 million tax-free. So if you're 30 years old and you start putting $7,000 away every year on a 10% rate of return, you're going to have $1 million at age 57. That's it. Not bad. Sounds great. And the longer you leave it, the better it gets. I mean, we can have fun with this. If I say, well, Mark, I'm a 20-year-old and I want to know what I'm going to have at age 57. Okay. So now you're going to have 37 years to kind of play with it. So you're going to start now at age 20, put $7,000 in a year, invest it in S&P 500 ETF. You could start getting more creative down the road. Let's say we get our 10% return, and then every year I put in that same 7,000. That's it. Here's the number, 2.7 million. Now I know that's hard. 20 years old, like I'm going to live forever. In 37 years, I don't care about that. This is how the rich get richer. Start practicing. I'm working with my kids who are in their 20s, funding their Roth IRAs every year. Now I'm going to teach you how the wealthy do it. So if you're making money online, you're making money somewhere in a business, selling a product, service, whatever, and you're making some good money, please, I beg of you, do not go out and buy a freaking Range Rover or a BMW. Don't go on trips all around the world every year. Don't go buy some mega house, mega apartment and blow money like it's water. Can you please consider what I'm about to show you? With the mega backdoor Roth, under age 50, you can have $1 million tax-free in 7.5 years. If you take a regular Roth IRA.
Alrighty, so let's kind of dive into what he's saying. So basically, the 7K that he's mentioning is the annual limit as of 2024 to put into a Roth IRA. Now, a Roth IRA, just like that, doesn't magically make you money, just like he mentioned. In order for your Roth IRA to grow, you actually have to invest this money. You need to go out there, buy ETFs such as that are tracked the S&P 500, for example. You could buy real estate investment trusts, which are more focused on the real estate market. Or you can even, buy Bitcoin, single stock, whatever you want. Essentially, the Roth IRA is a tool that you need to utilize to actually invest in yourself. So once you actually have the 7,000 in there, then you invest it, and based on the the 10% you mentioned, which is usually the average return of the S&P 500, you can make those great returns. It just takes time. It takes discipline. It takes time. The next piece is for the wealthy. So essentially, there is an income limit threshold of how much you can put into a Roth IRA. If you make above roughly $160,000, modified adjusted gross income in 2024, that actually starts to phase you out of the Roth IRA and makes it more difficult for you to actually contribute to it. Usually when you're above this threshold, you can't contribute to the Roth IRA. So what he's talking about is something called a backdoor Roth IRA, where you actually put money into a traditional IRA with no standard deduction, and then after that you actually convert that to a Roth IRA. That's called backdoor IRA, which is very common, for people who are high income earners, and make it so you have the ability to actually still get into a Roth IRA even if you exceeded the Magi threshold. So this is really great stuff, and hopefully this helps out. So let's move on to the next creator now. Hello everyone, my name is Anthony and I'm the host of the Log Sanctuary. I hope you've been enjoying our content so far, and if you have, please feel free to like and subscribe. Also, we have our website up here, and we also have some socials down here, and as always, leave your comments down below. So this next creator is called Austin Hank Witz, and he's going to talk about 3 strategies of how to invest into the stock market.
Telling you the stock market is a casino, they are lying to you. I have over $1 million invested, so here are my 3 strategies for stock market success, starting with portfolio construction. Want the majority of your portfolio to be invested in index funds and ETFs, with the minority of it being invested in blue chip single stocks. Here's what I'm talking about. VOO, VTI, SCHD, SPYI, and QQQ should represent maybe 75, 85, 90% of a portfolio, while other names like Berkshire Hathaway, Amazon, Google, and other blue chip stocks could represent up to 25% of your portfolio. Noticed I said blue chip stocks, right? These are multi-trillion-dollar companies. I'm not talking about penny stocks. Up next is diversification.
So yeah, let's talk through the first piece. So basically what he's saying is you would invest into stocks that are specifically track things that based on the quantity. So there are specific stocks, for example, like QQQ, which track the NASDAQ 100, which are only tech stocks. So essentially the top 100 tech stocks. So what does this mean for you? It means that it's tracking the top 100 tech companies out there in the world. And essentially what that does is it allows you to actually have high growth, but also high risk. The QQQ has been, usually performing very well, but because of the amount of growth, it's usually a growth stock. However, it does have high risk with it, of course, because it's only tracking the top 100 tech companies. However, if you wanted to go more for, the S&P 500, then you can actually go, go with a fund that's more closely related to that. So I would say, depending on like your risk tolerance, you want to make sure that you're investing in the right, right stock, the right ETF, the right index fund, because what that will help you understand is that the more risky you go may not be the best thing for you. You might want to diversify, just like you mentioned here, into multiple different funds. That way you can cover yourself whenever tech is in a bad place. You can actually cover it with other companies like the top 500, which will actually have some form of risk tolerance. It'll actually diversify your risk a little bit with those kinds of things. So let's actually keep going with the video now.
You don't want to just be invested into stocks and index funds, you also want to diversify into real estate, precious metals, fine wine, whiskey, and other things like that. Some inspiration could be VNQ, GLD, SLV, VXUS, IYRI, QQQH, CSHI, BTCI, and many, many more. This type of portfolio is already very well diversified, but it's diversified among US stocks and equities. Adding this to the mix gets in a bunch of different asset classes and some international and precious metals to make sure that your portfolio is very diversified. The last thing I want to mention is consistency is more important than timing. When in doubt, zoom out. Sure, the stock market is down 7% this month, but when you zoom out to years and decades, it's up 400% over the last 15 years. Which means if you have a portfolio that includes index funds and ETFs and single stocks like this, as well as some diversified ideas like this, you too, over a long period of time, will get to $1 million. If your parents are telling
So yeah, let's talk through the last two pieces now. The next thing is, stocks are great, but the thing about it is you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. The next thing you want to think about is, how do I further diversify? Even within the stock market, there are funds specifically that are tracked for real estate, precious metals, and all these other kind of things. Because the only way, people tend to think the only way to invest in real estate is to go out and buy a house. There's actually a lot of real estate investment trusts out there that you can actually invest in, which will be great trackers of like the rental income industry. And actually, that's actually how they pay their real estate investment trusts, holders. They have a lot of rental properties out there, and as they get money from the rental properties, they'll then send that out to, their investors. So essentially, you become part owner of a lot of rental properties out there. Precious metals is another thing that continues to exceed expectations, where every year it is continuing to grow, and to keep, it's actually one of the inflation beaters out there. Especially during a recession, it's great to invest in, usually, to my understanding, in, like art, precious metals, and things like this, because that's another great diversifier for recessions. Now, the last piece. Usually, it's not a good idea to try to time the market. You can try to time the market, but it's not the most efficient way. Usually it's better to be more consistent. So every month you're putting in a certain amount of money into each of these funds, and then that's going to help you grow a lot more further down the line than if you try to time the market, try to buy at the dip and try to sell at the highest. It usually doesn't work out the best. Usually it's better to buy and hold than to continue to try to buy to sell high. You don't want to turn to a day trader, especially with all the other responsibilities that you have out there. So let's move on to the last video now.
Money, don't do these three things. Just don't. Okay, unless you want to be broke, feel broke, and be associated with broke, don't do these things. And the last one is major. But the first one, listen, don't buy things that don't pay you back. Learn how to retrain your mind and think, okay, how can this thing that I'm about to buy pay me back and put money back into my pocket? That's going to help you, number one, save some money. And then number two, create an asset that's going to pay you back. Second thing, Don't pay bills when they are due. Create a system where you pay bills one day out of the month or 1 week, either the beginning or the end, and then focus on generating income the rest of the month. Then the last one, don't prioritize value or don't prioritize hard work over value. The skills are ultimately what's going to pay the bills and set you free for real. Believe that. If you want to have money, don't.
Alrighty, so let's go into each of his points. The first thing is, don't buy things that won't generate you value or money. So what he means by that is, don't go out there and buy a car that's like $200,000. Because a car that's $200,000 is not going to really generate you value. It's not going to bring you money back. Now, if you instead you use those $200,000 to buy a single family rental property, and there's probably some out there that you could still buy for $200,000, of course, probably be fixer upper. I'm not gonna lie. But if you can instead invest it in things that will generate you money, such as investing it in the stock market, investing it into different asset classes that will actually pay you dividends, lead to growth, and actually secure your future, that's gonna be more important than having, for example, a $50,000 handbag, or buying one of the latest, buying high-end clothing. All of these items are what are going to prevent you from securing your future and having a lot more financial independence in your later years. The next piece is that he mentioned is, another piece that he mentioned was basically skills. Make sure that you're actually prioritizing skills over hard work, because it's easy for you to work 80 hours a week in a job that's maybe producing maybe $16 to $20 a week. However, if you actually grow your skills, such as, getting a college degree, working on making yourself a lot more viable for the future, such as learning about AI and automation, machine learning, all these kinds of things are actually going to produce better results for you in the long run. Because instead of you working 80 hours a week for $16 to $20 an hour, you might be able to work 40 hours a week if you have the right skill set, and probably be earning between $60 to $120 an hour in an industry where, you're using a lot more, instead of your physical brawn, you might be using a little bit more of your ingenuity and your skill set in order to actually making big dollars. Of course, out there you can actually, there's high earning capabilities as well. Being an electrician, working construction, which are all also great things, but what they require is the skills for you to use it. Those are also great things that you can work on, and also, good things you can do to make sure that you're maximizing your potential. Finally, the last thing he mentioned was basically pay your bills once a month. And what he means by that is that if you're constantly worrying about bills, you're not going to be focused on the grind, which is making money. And that's the thing that you want to be thinking about more than anything. Within a month, usually we only get, paid like maybe at most twice a month if we have like a traditional W-2 job. But if you actually think about your grind and start looking at side hustles and all these other kinds of things, you can actually focus on increasing your own income in a month to continue to invest in your future. However, another thing that I just want to say from my perspective is, instead of choosing like one day a month to actually, pay your bills, you can actually automate most of your bill pay. And if you do have to like pay your bills, like other bills manually, you could use once a month for that. So most of the time you could automate like your phone bill, your internet bill, even your utility bills. All these kinds of things can be automated, so that way it's kind of like you set it up and you forget about it kind of thing. And then you can focus just on the grind and making the best version out of you. So that's going to conclude us reacting to TikTok's episode 13. I hope everyone out there has a blessed day, and adios. Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing an amazing job, and I'm wishing everyone out there all the best. All right, until next time, adios.